now I want to present our last but not the least speaker. Today it will be Frederick Vallaeys, co-founder and chief executive officer of the Optmyzr from the United States. He will tell us how automation layering improves performance max results. Frederick is a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, author, and leading influencer in pay-per-click search marketing, one of the Google's first 500 employees. He helped pioneer PPC marketing at the company's first AdWords Evangelist. Today, he serves as co-founding chief executive officer of Optmyzr, a leading and award-winning PPC management platform. A sought-after industry thought leader, he contributes to leading marketing publications and conferences, and is routinely called upon by journalists, writers, and podcasters for his industry insights and vision. So, Frederick, we are happy to have you with us, and let's start.
Hi, my name is Fred Vallaeys. It's so great to be here for Skills Boosters PPC Day. I'm going to do a session today about how automation is affecting your performance to optimize your campaigns. And specifically, we're going to look at Performance Max campaigns, the newest campaign type from Google, and what you can do to make it better. So thanks for joining me today. I'm Fred Vallaeys. I'm co-founder and CEO at Optmyzr, and I've been doing PPC since 1998. So that's quite a long time ago. I started doing PPC in my college dorm room. I was trying to make a little bit of money, and I figured out I could use PPC ads to sell some video cassettes that I was buying from Blockbuster. Since then, I joined Google, so I was one of the first 500 people. And 10 years ago, I decided to take everything that I had learned at Google and to start solving real problems for advertisers based on the things that I knew Google wasn't really going to do. So now we have Optmyzr, PPC management software, and it really fills the gaps in terms of the functionality that Google provides and what it is that advertisers are trying to achieve. And so hopefully I'll teach you a few things here today that you can take away to your businesses and really start doing something very interesting with right away. So as far as what I wanted to cover, really three portions. And we don't have a lot of time, so we're going to go pretty quick here. But first of all, we're going to talk about the changing nature of PPC management and PPC optimization. Why are things changing, and what does it mean for you? I'll give you some high-level tips on how to work with automation, and then I want to leave you with some specific advice of how you can still manage in a more automated world, and specifically what you can do to optimize your Performance Max campaigns. So let's begin about why are we even having this session, right? So what is the changing nature of PPC management? Well, it comes as no surprise to you that automation has really changed things. And if we think about the way that we optimized PPC campaigns before automation, it meant managing 1,000 details, specific keywords, specific ad texts, geo targets, bids for every single keyword, landing page optimization, URL selection, destination URL selection, all of these things, right? And it was a lot of very specific work that we had to do to make the campaigns give us the results that we wanted. And ultimately, that's the only reason we did this, is because we had specific results in mind, and we had to pull 1,000 levers to achieve those results. Nowadays, things have changed, and you can very clearly see this in a campaign type, which is fairly new from Google. It's called Performance Max. Performance Max will take your inputs as to what it is you're trying to achieve, and it will automatically run these across all of Google's properties. So whether it's Google Discover, a Gmail campaign, the display network, search, shopping, all of these things are handled for you. And the idea from Google is that automation pushes all the buttons for you. And so you save a lot of time and you can be more focused on strategy. So that is a pretty big radical change. And what it means for us is that instead of managing the 1,000 details that we did before, now we kind of have to up-level our game. So the machine, the AI from Google, pushes all the buttons. We get to manage at the periphery of the ad system, and we get to be more focused on inputs to the AI and the machine learning system. So for example, we have to be really good at defining goals. If you don't tell Google what it is you're actually trying to achieve, it's going to do something, but it may not be the thing that you actually wanted it to do. So you have to define goals. And then for each of those goals, you have to define what is the value. How much can you afford to pay for it? That's often not that easy of a question to answer. Now that's something we need to spend a lot more time on, actually get it right, because otherwise, again, the machine is just going to go off the rails and do the wrong thing for us. And then we have this concept of automation layers. As you deploy more and more automation, whether you're forced to do it from Google or whether it's your choice to use automated bidding, you probably want to put in place some layers on top of that which control the machines, which make sure that the Google machine is doing the job that you wanted it to do. And so you can either manually check on that, or you can put in your own automation systems through third-party tools like Optmyzr or through scripts that will do these checks for you and save you a lot of time and make sure that you're still getting the results that you want. Is it actually still necessary for humans to be involved in PPC management? And the answer is very simply yes. We could discuss it for quite a while, but here's some research from Boston Consulting Group. And basically they found that if an advertiser deploys automation on their account, they're going to see 20% more results from advanced technology. But if you layer humans on top of that automation, you get a further 15% improvement. Now, if you're managing a $100 a month campaign, 15%, probably not worth your time, right? So in that case, you might just want to give it all to Google, say run Performance Max, and you're fine, you're done. Go spend your time on something more high value. But if you're an advertiser spending $10,000 a month, well, that 15% all of a sudden becomes meaningful money. That's a meaningful amount of money for you to actually sit down and say, okay, maybe I should dial in these 5 settings that I can and get a little bit more than the average results from something like Performance Max. So that's why I think there's still a lot of work for all of us to do in PPC management. Okay, but if you're going to start using automation, and it's really not if you're going to start using it, but when you start using it, because you have to use it at this point, when you use it, really think about removing constraints, right? There's this story about how high can a flea jump? Well, a flea can jump 150 times its own height. That's a pretty high jump. But if you take a flea and you put it in a small box, it will learn not to jump too high because otherwise it's going to hit its head on the top of the box. It's kind of the same thing with automation. If you constrain automation too much, it's never going to learn all of these other conversions that might exist in the world, which it could have had access to. And so think about it this way, as you see on the slide. But if you go into automation and you say, my target cost per acquisition is $100. Well, if you've told the machine that, then do you really need to constrain it with something like the match type of your keywords? Well, you could put a restriction on the match type, but it means that a whole set of broad match conversions may just not happen because you're forcing the machine to stay with exact match keywords. If you tell the machine that you have a $100 CPA, but you can only show ads in a certain zip code, well, again, great, you may get those conversions, but it means that all of the conversions outside of that zip code, which could have happened, the machine could have found them for you, are not going to happen. So the key message here is, in the beginning, give the machine some freedom to actually go and explore new things that you may not have done in the past. And then over time, you might see that it's gone a little bit too broad with certain queries, or it's gone a little bit too far away from the geography in which you tend to do well. And then you can put those constraints back into place. But in the beginning, it tends to make sense to remove some of these constraints. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that when we talk about automation, it's not a magic bullet. So if you have a broken business model, automation is not going to fix that for you. And we can spend an entire session on each of these points, but basically, is your landing page easy enough to navigate? If some lead comes in and maybe they call your business, who's picking up the phone? Are they doing a good job selling the value proposition, collecting the lead? We've seen too many examples where the person picking up the phone doesn't even know anything about the ads you're running, and so they completely mess up that potential lead. And then the PPC campaign gets blamed, even though it was really the sales team that didn't do a good job. Are your shipping rates competitive? Are your response times fast? Do you do something with first-party data? First-party data, what that simply means is maybe you get someone to come to your website through PPC, through a search keyword, and maybe they don't buy on that first interaction. Well, are you capturing that user's data? Are you asking them if they want to be on your email list? Are you offering them a special coupon? Are you doing something to convince them down the line to become a customer of yours? If you're not doing these things, then you're just going to see suboptimal results, and a PPC campaign on its own cannot fix this for you. Okay, but let's talk about Performance Max and a couple of very specific ways that you can optimize these campaigns. So first of all, I talked about this before, but you have to set the right goals and the right targets. And now think about this. If you're doing lead gen, you could say if somebody fills out a form on my page, that is a lead, that is a conversion. And so you tell Google that that is the conversion you wanted to go and find for you through an automated campaign like Performance Max. Well, think about that conversion. Someone filling out the lead form page, that's not really what you care about, right? So conversion one is someone filling out the lead form page. The second person who fills out that lead form page actually goes and gets a free estimate. They picked up the phone when your salesperson called them to schedule an appointment. And the third conversion, not only did they get a quote, an estimate, but they also ended up buying from you. They became a customer. And so that third quote unquote conversion, that's the actual thing you want. But the point is you have to communicate that to Google. Too many advertisers, they stop at that first stage of somebody filled out a form on my page. That's a conversion. Get me more of these. Well, guess what often happens? Google finds you hundreds, if not thousands of these quote unquote conversions, but they're all junk. They don't convert. And Google doesn't know that that's a problem because you didn't tell it that you actually wanted high quality leads. So the question then becomes, well, how do you identify and communicate those high value leads to Google? So you can apply conversion tracking, you can take the G-CLID, which is the Google Click ID, and you can communicate that back to Google. But these tend to be somewhat complicated technical problems that you have to get your website development team involved with, and so it often doesn't get done. Now, lucky, Google has come out in the last year or so with what they call enhanced conversions for leads. This is a way that you can put on a simple piece of code on your landing pages where the form fill is based, and instead of having to capture the G-CLID from Google and carry it all the way through your CRM system, which again, that's complicated, you can rely on the email address or some other piece of unique data about the prospect. And email address tends to be it, right? People put in their email address on the form field, and when they become a customer, you also know that that was the email address of someone who became a customer. That is what connects the dots on the back end for Google, is that unique piece of information. So Google has a new way. So if you haven't looked into enhanced conversions for leads, go and take a look at that, because that allows you to better communicate to the AI system what it is you truly care about. Now, if you still don't want to do this, you want a simpler solution, here's another way to think about it. These three conversions that I showed you before, if you tend to find that a higher proportion of the good conversions come from a certain market, so in this case we say that most of the leads that come from the US are pretty high quality. The leads that come from the UK, they tend to not go quite as far, right? So they're kind of medium quality. And the leads that come from India, maybe those are the lowest quality because it's not your target market. So what you can do is there's this technology from Google called conversion value rules. And so what you can now do is you can just capture the form fill, but you can say, make a rule. If we detect that the country of the form fill was India, don't change the value. If we detect that it came from the UK, give double the value. And if we detect that it came from the US, then give it 3 times the value, because we think those are the most valuable leads. And now guess what? The machine sees more value coming from the leads when they come from the US. So it says, hey, we got to go focus and get more leads from the US as opposed to get thousands of leads from India, which this advertiser doesn't seem to like quite as much. Right? So these are ways to connect the dots. Now, number 2, creative optimization. Here's an interesting stat. This from Optmyzr. We manage about $4.1 billion a year in Google ads, and we found that 92% of advertisers, so almost everyone, is using responsive search ads for their creatives. However, only about 20% of all the ads that we see in the system are RSAs. So what this tells me is everybody's trying them, but a lot of people are not taking their accounts all the way to this more advanced type of ad, right? So they keep a lot of expanded text ads in the system, which actually don't get as many impressions as responsive search ads. So that might be a mistake. Now, as far as creative generation with Performance Max, Google is just going to ask you, put in a bunch of headlines, put in a bunch of description lines, and at some point you may run out of steam. You may have no more ideas for what ad text to put in. ChatGPT or GPT-3 from OpenAI, all of these new AI automation systems are really good at giving new suggestions. So if you kind of get writer's block, just say, here's some of the ads that I've written before, go and give me variations of this. And so this can give you new ideas for headlines to put in. So if you haven't played with ChatGPT, check that out. It is really good. And Optmyzr, by the way, already includes this. So you can just log into Optmyzr, say, give me more headlines, and we use AI technology to come up with variations of the ads that have already worked for you in the past. Now, number 3, use account structure to achieve business goals. Now, Google will often tell you to simplify things, just have a single Performance Max campaign. So I got to take you on a little sidetrack here, but talk about automated bidding. So automated bidding really only works when you optimize to the right targets. And what does that mean? Well, there's two ways to do optimization. You can do a global optimization, which is to say I'm going to have one campaign, and that one campaign has one target. And within that one campaign, I sell everything that I sell, every kind of lead, every kind of product. And so what happens when you do this global optimization is the winners start subsidizing the losers. Say that you sell travel packages. Maybe you get a high margin on hotels and a lower margin on flight bookings. While the high margin from the hotels is going to subsidize the low margin from your flights, and it's going to find the global optimal place for you to advertise at. But you could actually be selling things that don't lead to a profit, right? As you sell more of these flights, maybe Google is overspending for that because they're trying to find the global maximization. As far as local optimization, that says, well, I'm going to have one campaign for each target, right? So I'm going to end up with multiple campaigns with multiple targets, and now each of these things has to find the optimal point for itself. So my flights and my hotels are not going to be subsidizing each other. I want to get the best possible performance from each of these different things. And so if you think about how business should work, business probably should work in the way of having multiple campaigns. And so the other point about bid automation, and Performance Max obviously has automated bidding, but if you let Google's flagship, state-of-the-art, best-in-class automated bidding, which is maximize conversion value, if you let it do its job with the wrong target, it's going to give you exactly $0 of profit, right? So it's giving you the most value, the biggest revenue, but no profit, okay? Do you want profit? Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but that's a question you have to ask, and you have to understand how these systems work. And so in my opinion, I think you really should have multiple campaigns, because if you sell stuff, right, if you do shopping, you have different product lines and they have different margins. If they have different margins, you need different campaigns, so you can set different targets so that you actually optimize your profit as opposed to your overall revenue. So that is one reason to really think about your account structure. Now, once you have account structure, you can also start dialing in the right budgets to maximize your performance. Again, this is not rocket science, but basically, if you sell summer items and winter items, you may want to shift budgets between them to prioritize the summer items in summer and the winter items in winter. If you put everything into a single campaign, then you don't have that flexibility. So again, just think about, how does your business work? What are your business rules that you want to put in place? And that often determines what kind of campaign structures you want to have. And that makes sense even when you have Performance Max campaigns. And then, of course, if you have multiple campaigns, you can also do budget optimization. And so here's an example from Optmyzr, where we say we're going to allocate more budget to the highest performing campaigns first. And then if we have budget left, then we assign it to the second best campaign, and then the third, right? And eventually we run out of budget, but we've put it in the best performing places. And that's not just within Google, by the way. This can be across platforms. This can be across search, social, all of the different places where you're trying to get new customers and where you're spending money. Now, 5, there's a big new one that is specific to Performance Max, but think about your audiences. So create and use audiences. The first audience you definitely want to put in is your existing customer list. So capture the data. Who are your existing customers? Feed that list back into Google, and now you can tell Google that you don't want to spend money on your existing customers, but you'd rather get new customers. If Google doesn't know who's already a customer of yours, they're going to market to them just the same as they market to new customers. This is a tool that gives you the flexibility to tell Google whether you care more about new customers or whether you don't mind getting existing customers to come back and purchase from you again from the same campaigns. And then you can also add other audiences. So if you have your existing customer list, or you have them segmented by different things that they've bought, you can attach these lists to Google's Performance Max, and it's basically a way for the machine to learn a little bit more quickly who's in your audience segments. Right? Otherwise, the machine will figure it out eventually, but it has to spend money to build up that data. If you already have the data about different audiences, go ahead and make those lists, attach them to Google, and that's going to give you a big head start. Now, 6, Geo Performance. Right? Google will often say, well, if you give us a performance target, like a target CPA, then who cares about putting a geographic restriction in place? Like the example I gave you about letting the machine have some flexibility in the beginning. Well, here's the other problem again. It's about that whole global versus local optimization. If you have lead gen and you think you can afford to pay $25 for a lead in New York because New York-based customers are more valuable and customers from or prospects from Milwaukee are less valuable, maybe you can only afford to pay $15 CPA for them, well, then Google might say the average of $20 CPA is the point where we should be at. Well, sure, but if you're paying $20 on average, and that includes paying for $20 for some customers out of Milwaukee, you might be losing money on those customers, right? Because you can only afford 15. But again, if you give Google too much flexibility, you let it group everything together, it's going to allocate money in the way that it sees fit without regards to profits. Again, it's going to give you maximum revenue, but not necessarily maximum profit. And so in its quest to generate more revenue, it is sometimes making bad decisions and spending too much. And that next lead is actually losing you money. It's cutting into your profit. So that's why we think that it also makes sense to consider your geo targets and set up different campaigns for those different performance max campaigns. And then finally, there's optimization with structured feeds and data. If you think about the new way of advertising, we're no longer really just writing ads. Oftentimes we say, here's a product feed, here's all the things we sell. Google goes and automatically puts together the right ads at the right time. Well, that means that your lever to optimize what's shown in the ad is what is in your feed. And so some good examples, but avoid vague titles. Front load the most important things in your titles because they often get cut off after about 70 characters. Include relevant attributes, the colors. Are we calling something burgundy or do we call it red? Right? More people will resonate with the word red versus burgundy. So standardize to the types of things that people search for, because Google also uses the data from the feed to match it to different searches. So think about your feed as your way to control what shows up in the ads. And then the very last one is put constraints back into place, right? So in the beginning, we let the system figure it out, but at the end of the day, we still have shared negative lists. So we can have a shared negative list, whether that's for placements or whether that's for negative keywords. We can create those at the account level, and then we can associate them to the performance max campaigns so that effectively we're telling the system that don't even bother trying to show the ads in this place or on that keyword or on that website or on that mobile placement. Now, you can do that by yourself. You often don't get the data in Performance Max campaigns, but you're still running search campaigns. So whatever findings you have from a search campaign, put them in the negative shared list and then associate that to the Performance Max list. Or you can take a look at a tool like Optmyzr, and we look at that $4 billion of spend that we manage, and we proactively will put negatives in to your account, because we've seen other websites waste money on certain placements. And so we can automatically put that on your negative list so that you never even have to try it. You're not going to waste that money. So those are some tips. If you enjoyed this, if you want to learn more about automation layering and advertising in a digital world, I've written 2 books. They're both on Amazon. Unlevel the Playing Field is the second book, so that's the more recent one. But they're really easy reads. People have liked them, so check them out and take a look if you're interested. We also have a 2-week free trial of Optmyzr on the website, so just go to optmyzr.com and see what our software can do to make your lives easier and get your results to be better. And with that, thank you very much. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect. I'm also on Twitter at Silicon Vallaeys. And I'm Frederick at optmyzr.com if anyone wants to email me. So let's do some questions.
Thank you, Fred, for a great speech. Thank you for all speakers and for all our today's listeners. Today's online conference PPC Day was full of insights, detailed toolkits, case studies, and I hope you loved it.